John. As he walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. Then he went and washed and came back able to see. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some were saying, "It is he." Others were saying, "No, it's someone like him." But he kept saying, "I am the man." But they kept asking him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" And he answered, "The man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and said, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' Then I went and washed and received my sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I don't know." They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask him how he had received his sight. He said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, then I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" And they were divided. So then again, they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened." He said, "He's a prophet." The Jews did not believe he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, "Is this your son who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know this is our son, and we know that he was born blind, but we do not know how it is that he now sees, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He's of age. He'll speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, "He's of age. Go ask him." So for the second time they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, "Give glory to God. We know this man is a sinner." He said, "I do not know whether he's a sinner. One thing I do know, even though I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" They answered him, "I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples?" Then they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Here is an astonishing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born entirely in sins, and are you trying to teach us?" And they drove him out. Jesus heard that they had driven him out, and he found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir? Tell me so I may believe in him." Jesus said to him, "You have seen him. He's the one, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshiped him. Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees near him heard this and said to him, "Surely we're not blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would not have sinned. But now that you say we see, your sin remains." These are the words of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Scott Neeson was president of 20th Century Fox International. He oversaw the release of major films in Europe and Asia. Films like Titanic and Braveheart and Independence Day and X-Men and the Star Wars prequel and over 100 other films. In 2003, he decided he would take a vacation to Cambodia. "Show me poverty," he said to this rich man, said to his guide. So the guide took him to a landfill outside Phnom Penh, where countless children, many of whom are orphans, still sift through hazardous burning waste, looking for plastics and metals that they can sell to recycling centers so they can earn a living for themselves and their parents or their families. He saw these folks, he talked with some of the children, and his eyes were open. He knew he had lots of money. He had $1 million a year job. And he decided to start a charity work to get these children off of that dump and into school. So he began that work, he got it started, and he went back to work for 20th Century Fox International. About a year later, he was dealing with a celebrity that he had flown to Japan to publicize a movie. And the celebrity was about to get back on the private jet to fly him back to Los Angeles. And he was upset because he had requested certain movies to watch in flight, and they didn't have them on the jet. And he was so upset that he called his agent in, and they were fussing and fuming at Scott on the phone in a conference call. And the celebrity said, "My life wasn't meant to be this difficult." When he said those words to Scott on the phone, Scott was standing in Cambodia at that landfill. He said his eyes were opened even further, and he decided that he wanted to spend his life in a different way. He went back to Los Angeles. He sold his home, his Porsche, his boat. He gave up his $1 million a year job, and he went back to Cambodia to oversee full-time his Cambodian Children's Fund. He began to see clearly. Our Bible story today is about a man who also gains the ability to see, and it changes his life too. We discover at the beginning of our story that he is considered a sinner because he was born blind. The folks in that day felt that if anything was wrong with you at birth or any time in your life, that God was putting judgment on you. And either you had sinned or your parents had sinned. But he was in good company because they considered Jesus to be a sinner too, because he broke the Sabbath rule and healed the man on the Sabbath. The man doesn't even get to see Jesus' face until the end of the story. Jesus puts mud on his eyes and tells him to go wash in the pool of Siloam, and when he gets back, Jesus is gone and he can see. Have you ever had something really great happen to you? Something you were so excited about, only to tell other people and have them rain on your parade? That's happened to all of us, I think, hasn't it? When I became full-time pastor of this church, I was so excited. I felt it was something that God had been leading me toward all my life, but there were some who thought it was just plain wrong that a woman ought to be preaching. Our newly sighted man experiences that feeling. Something powerful has happened to him. He doesn't have a clue how it happened. He doesn't know what he did to get chosen. He doesn't know exactly who this man Jesus is that smeared the mud on his eyes. He just knows he can see. But everybody else wants to know how it happened. How were your eyes open? Who is the man that did it? How did he open your eyes? What kind of man do you think he is since he opened your eyes? Not a single soul says, "How wonderful," or "We're so glad for you," or "Thank God." They don't ask him how it was to see for the first time in his life, or whether the light hurt his eyes. They just say, how and who and where and what. It's such an amazing and unsettling event that they assume he has to be mixed up in something not quite right. And for all he knows, that may be true. Because he can see for the first time in his life, and that miracle has made him rethink everything he thought he knew for certain about the world. He doesn't know what to believe about what happened to him. All he knows is that it has happened. And while everyone else around him wants to know what's right and wrong, he doesn't care about all of that. So what if it's wrong? He can see. He starts out timidly answering their questions. He says, "Yes, I'm the man. I don't know. He just put mud on my eyes, then I washed, and now I see." But as the questions go on, and the arguments mount until his own mama and daddy step back into the wings and want to get away from it, he starts to grow courage in his frustration. And he finally tells those Pharisees that they couldn't see God if God bit them on the nose. That insult deserved punishment, and they threw him out of the synagogue. Now that was a big deal. To throw him out of the synagogue was to throw him out of the community. He could not see his parents or his friends or anyone else. He was an outcast. But all is not lost. Jesus hears about his rejection, and he comes to him face to face. And I love this last scene. Jesus walks up on his blind side. Get that? He walks up on his blind side. And he pokes the guy in the ribs, and he says, "Hey, fella, do you believe in the Son of God, the Son of Man?" And the guy says, "Not more questions." And he turns around and he says, "Well, who is he? Tell me so I can believe him." And Jesus says, "You're able to see him now, aren't you?" And the man realizes who it is. And he says, "Lord, I believe." Now his confession doesn't take place in church. In fact, the whole community of the faithful have nothing to do with it because they've thrown both of these two men out. And yet, here we are in church reading this story and claiming it is a story about us. So I think that what that means is most of the time we see ourselves in the place of the blind man. But the truth is, depending on the subject or the person or the day, we could be the half-blind disciples or maybe his family or even the Pharisees. We could be his family and his neighbors who were curious, but when the questions got really hot and the heat got turned up, they stepped back and didn't want to get too involved. Quite often, we're the half-blind disciples with earnest believers who haven't quite awakened to the full light, trying to make Jesus all about us and our circumstances. You know, the disciples were walking around. We got a little bet going on, Jesus, about who's to blame here. Tell us who won. Or we could be the Pharisees, guardians of the faith who are quick to judge quick to criticize those who don't keep the faith according to our standards. In John's story, the Pharisees are the ones to watch out for because they think they can see better than other people. And they don't mind telling you. And they don't do it to be mean. Here's the thing. They do it because they love God. And probably because they love other people too. They don't want them believing the wrong things. But their certainty that they know what the wrong things are blind them to this whole miracle that's taken place in front of them. A blind man has been given his sight and they can't even see it because it didn't happen the way they expected. It was beyond what they understood. It didn't follow the rules. They were so sure of everything. They were sure that God didn't work on Sundays. They were sure that Moses was God's only spokesperson. They were sure that anyone who was born blind had to be a sinner, and so was anybody who broke the Sabbath rules. They were sure that God didn't work through sinners and that God didn't work on sinners. And especially they were sure that they didn't need to learn anything else, that nobody could teach them anything. Meanwhile, the man who was born blind, he wasn't sure about anything. The only thing he was sure about was that he was blind and now he could see. It's so difficult to see the world and ourselves as God sees us. Old habits die hard. Our vision gets hampered by past ideas and choices. For us as Christians, the most dangerous spiritual attitude we can have is the notion that we can see clearly, that we know for certain. Believing we see fully and rightly, we stumble around in the dark. We're blind to the need to have our own vision correct. Those who have good spiritual eyes realize that recognizing blindness is actually free. It's really hard to be right all the time. Perfection is a hard burden to carry around. I read an article this past couple of weeks by Barbara Brown Taylor who said that she's always wondered about that sentence of Jesus saying he came into the world so that those who cannot see can see and those who can see will become blind. She said she always heard that as a threat, but she talked to a person who was blind, and he told her about how he could sense the world so particularly. He saw it more clearly, she said, than she did, because she had the light to show her. She thought she just assumed a lot of things and didn't see them clearly. But this man who lived in the dark saw everything very clearly. She said that she now believes this sentence is a hope that we will seek to become blind, so we don't just always depend on what we have seen and known, but we allow God to lead us in new directions. John Newton was a slave trader who came to see that his work was wrong. You may not know his name, but you know the hymn he wrote. Amazing Grace. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. John Newton. He's saying, once I saw the world selfishly. I thought I could buy and sell certain people for my own gain. Once I believed this, but now I see God's world and God's people differently. My eyes are open. Now I see and know differently. The truth is, we're all blind to a lot of things, including the needs of each other and our world. But the good news, children, is that Jesus is the healer of blind folks. It's only, though, when we can identify the fact that we're blind that we can experience the cure. The journey toward the light begins when we acknowledge the darkness we are in. I once was blind, but now I see. This confession is everything in the world of faith. When we can see that we're blind, then Jesus can enlarge our vision. And when we are healed to where we actually see, who knows what God will do with us. Thanks be to God. Amen. We have a special treat for us today. Gracie's going to play a hymn in our hymn book. The hymn is number 273. Jesus' hands were kind hands. You will know the tune that Gracie is playing. It's Claire de Lune. She's learned it and played it for her recital. And so she's going to lead us as we play. And I've asked her to play it through one time. And then we'll all sing with you, okay? All right. Let's stand as we sing. Jesus' hands were kind hands, doing good to all, healing pain and sickness, blessing children small, washing tired feet and saving those who fall. Jesus' hands were kind hands, doing good to all. Take my hands, Lord Jesus, let them work for you. Make them strong and gentle, kind in all I do. Let me watch you, Jesus, till I'm gentle too. Till my hands are kind hands, quick to work for you. Would you give all our young people a hand today? Sleeper, awake. Open your eyes. Go to live as children of light. Shine forth in the darkness of the world. Entrust your seeing to God, and God will enlarge your vision. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Y'all have a good week.